Hey everybody, welcome back to The Takeover. I'm your host, Matt Johnson, and I'm excited today to talk about a really cool subject that I've been studying for a while, and I have a subject matter expert here to join me on the show. I'm going to introduce to you our friend and guest, Lindsay Konzak. Lindsay is the owner of Aspens Media, a B2B content marketing firm specializing in wholesale distribution and manufacturing. She's a professional writer, editor, marketer, communication specialist, and she's the former editor of Modern Distribution Management. I know a lot of you guys go there and rely on their resources, and that is, in my opinion, the leading resource for wholesale distribution executives. Lindsay, so awesome to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt.
Awesome. Well, I got so many questions here today, Lindsay, because as I told you before we began, I've been studying the concept of storytelling, and because obviously I want to be a better storyteller for my own brand. That's kind of the reason why I started this show, The Takeover, really was to tell my story and invite people along inside of that story. And I know that that's a lot of what you do when you help people do with their content marketing. So I got a lot of questions to cover today. But before we get into those questions, I want to start by just asking you to tell us a little bit about your journey and why ultimately did you decide to start a B2B content marketing firm?
Yes, that's a very good question, Matt. So I don't know if it's okay with you if I can back up and just kind of address the definition of content marketing a little bit.
Please.
Because I feel like people sometimes get tripped up on that phrase, thinking it's kind of a fancier word than it actually is. So I guess I think content marketing is kind of a fancy way of saying that companies need to develop resources around to help their customers make buying decisions, right? At its very, very basic. So, and more than that, I think it's just a way of establishing your expertise in the market. It's a way, like you said, of telling your story, telling people what you're all about. And I think this is something distributors and manufacturers, I guess, of all shapes and sizes, all products, from the technical to the commodity, have been doing a long time offline. And so I just don't want people to overthink what content marketing actually is. I think that a lot of these distributors are experts, and for some reason, maybe that hasn't translated well online in the digital space. And so that's kind of one of my core beliefs, and kind of what drives me. And I think this has become more important as B2B buyers kind of take more control of the buying process, of the purchasing process. They're waiting longer to reach out to field sales reps. They're doing research on their own. Everything's changing. So that's kind of the underlying kind of mission of what we do, is to help distributors, help manufacturers translate that expertise through new channels. So that's all to say. My background is journalism. As you said, I used to be the editor of MDM. So I've been telling stories for years. I've been interviewing executives, writing, case studies and analysis of company strategy. I've written about Amazon more times than I probably can count. And so it was a natural fit for me when it was time to move on from MDM to kind of wanting to tell brand stories. I mean, that's just what I do. That's at my core. I'm very passionate, as you know, about the role content can play in companies executing their strategies. Kind of, not to be cliche, but in this new kind of marketplace, in this new world that we're operating.
Love it. And it totally makes sense, by the way. What you just said about these distributors and manufacturers, they've done this for a long, long time. This isn't something new. They do it tremendously well offline. And what you're saying is what you help them do is to communicate that value proposition online in written form.
Yes. It's all about translating that expertise online.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's kind of talk about the idea of storytelling. And obviously that's got to be a big part of content marketing as you've defined it. So how would you kind of differentiate storytelling from, say, blogging or branding? If I'm an executive and I'm familiar with those terms, what does storytelling mean to me?
Sure. And I think I like to differentiate a little bit between the content itself and the channels that it goes through. Because I think blog is another, and you might agree with this, but blog is another one of those words that kind of gets thrown out there. People, for some reason, still think it's this kind of new generation technology or tool that people use, that it's still, you know, this hipster guy sitting in front of his computer in a coffee shop writing about, you know, the top 5, you know, I don't know, coffee bean, I don't know. But it's, for some reason, there's still a lot of people that don't think that a blog is right for them. And to me, it's just a channel through which you can tell your story. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. So I think that blogging and storytelling can be one and the same. And in terms of branding, I think that if you tell your story right and you connect with your customers' pain points and you're really being authentic, your brand's going to benefit, right? So that, I think that's all part of an overall strategy that you need to employ in order to get your message across and kind of stand out in today's world. It's really about storytelling, I think, is about kind of making yourself out to be human. It's about not necessarily about like telling a once upon a time type story. It's kind of just bringing that human element to it, showing empathy for your prospects or companies, and I think most importantly, not sounding like you're always selling something. So that to me is kind of at a high level what storytelling is all about. It's about being you, and being you no matter what touch point or no matter what channel you're communicating to your customer through. So,
Yeah, I love that. I think what you said there was very important. It's about being human, and you know, I know a lot of traditional distributors and manufacturers, sales reps. They talk a lot about the idea of, you know, humans buy from humans, and it's very important to, you know, have that human interaction. And I really don't ever think that, you know, a sales rep in the traditional sense will ever be obsolete, no matter how, you know, advanced our technology becomes. We really still do want to buy from another human being. The problem is that that human being is limited in their ability to reach, you know, the audiences they really need to reach. So content marketing and storytelling in particular is a way to take that human element, the thing that they're really good at, and connecting with their customers and talking about the story of the brand and their expert, and sharing their expertise and amplifying it much more farther than they could ever do just by themselves. Would you say that's correct?
I agree completely. And I think, you know, we work with a lot of companies that work with distributors and have done a lot of research on this channel. And, you know, what a lot of this shows is that, yes, the field sales rep, their role is changing, but as you said, it's not going to go away. But I think that the way it's changing, or the fact that their role is kind of zeroing in on kind of, you know, that consultative role that they've always been good at, or at least the good ones have been good at, right? And those that aren't those guys will probably become obsolete. But that, I think, aligns really well. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit later as well, but I think that aligns really, really well with this idea of content marketing and telling your story better in the market.
Love it. So let me ask you this. So in terms of why, like getting at the reason why content marketing, why storytelling, what is it about storytelling that engages the human brain? And I mean, maybe there's a little bit of psychology here, right? Like, you know, any psychology majors out there, but you know, like, you know, what is the deal with that? Why do we resonate so powerfully with storytelling?
You know, I think it goes back to that human element, right? In terms of, I guess, you know, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a writer. I could interview a psychologist and write about that topic. In fact, that could be really interesting to learn more about. But kind of my take on that is that, you know, the world, there's so much information out there right now, right? And a lot of it's the same. So I feel like if you can build a story, provide resources that really resonate with what your customers are actually facing. If they have a lot of shrinkage in their, if a distributor has, they experience a lot of shrinkage in their inventory, for example, and you have a technology solution that can address that, rather than talking about all the great features and benefits of that solution, you can, you speak to that pain point, like what does that cost them? And I think I think that people want to know you care. They want to know you get them, and they don't have time to care about, just another sales pitch that sounds like everybody else's, which is kind of a roundabout way of, again, I'm not a scientist, but I think empathy works, and authentic empathy works even better. So, so that's kind of a roundabout way of saying I agree with you.
Yeah. So I get it.
That is an important point, for sure.
Right. So I get the idea of, and I think what you just ended on there was really key. The idea of empathy being a part of it, right? It's drawing you into the story. It is connecting with you and your pain points, and then instead of necessarily shoving a solution down your throat, we're talking about it. We're having a conversation about it, and then it allows you, like as the buyer, we kind of bring this back to B2B marketing. It allows the buyer to kind of come to the conclusion on their own, as opposed to, a hard sale.
Yes, and I think that's a really good point, Matt. If I can expand on that a little bit, is that content marketing is designed more as an inbound vehicle versus an outbound vehicle, which kind of runs counter to what a lot of industrial organizations have traditionally done. But I think it's also about it's kind of like maybe the modern day equivalent of the old sales visits, or maybe people are, there's still people doing this, dropping donuts by. It's about developing trust, developing a relationship, but it's not necessarily about always being in person one-on-one, but it's about, like you said, showing that company you understand what they're going through the various resources and messages that you send them, and then through that process, when they're ready to buy, they think, oh, XYZ company, they get it. They know what they're talking about. Let's give them a call.
Awesome. So I'd like you to kind of touch on some key elements of what you would consider good storytelling. And then we'll, on the other end of the break, we're gonna talk about how to actually implement it. But maybe you could just talk to us briefly about, what does good storytelling look like if I'm a industrial distributor or manufacturer?
It's a tough question, because I feel like it's different for everyone. But I'm guessing you're not going to let me get away with that answer. So
no, we ask the hard hitting questions here on the takeover.
What we do when we're working on developing a plan for companies in terms of a content marketing strategy, and I'm not going to get too technical here, but a content strategy, which is a little bit different. When we're planning out content, one of the first things that we start with is talking to the customers. And that's kind of one of the most important pieces, and where you need to start. So I think an important element of storytelling, and where everyone should start, is making sure that they understand. And a lot of companies say they understand, but I don't 100% think that's true. They think they understand what their customers care about. They think they understand what their customers prioritize in terms of what they care about. But a lot of times I feel like they might have a general idea, but they need to talk to them. They need to interview them, survey them, whatever vehicle that you want to use. And I think that's where you have to start. You have to start with the customer. You have to identify the pain points, what they care about, and build a plan from there. So from a storytelling standpoint, I don't know how technical you want me to get or how specific, but let's take the example of maybe a distributor that's providing vending to their customers, and they want to sell that vending service. So the manufacturing plant have now gone further down the supply chain with shrinkage, but they're experiencing a lot of shrinkage there, and or maybe they don't always have the equipment they need on the plant floor where they're doing the work, and they need to walk, 2 buildings over to get what they need or something, so it's just taking them longer to get things done. So you identify, hey, that's a big pain point. So how can we what are the different vehicles by which we can address that pain point and showcase that we know, we get it, we understand what you're going through. Oh, and by the way, we do have a solution that help you express it. So really it's about, that's the core, right? That pain point, truly understanding that, and then building resources around that. I'm a huge fan of case studies. I'm a huge fan of showcasing, hey, here's a story of another company and how they address that issue. And you're talking not just about how awesome the solution is, you're talking, case study is kind of an easy explanation for, building out the elements of the story. You're talking about, what are the challenges that they faced before this solution came into being, right? And, and then, hey, here's Mr. Solution and how did it, fix it? And, maybe there's some challenges along the way, and that's all about being authentic. So I think I'm going all over the place here, but I think two of the biggest elements here are truly understanding what your customers are going to care about, or you're going to waste your time telling the story in the first place. And then an authentic approach, an authentic story, something that's real. Even if it's a case study, it's not all about you, it's all about them. I think those are the 2 most important elements when you're trying to connect with your customers through these kinds of tools.
Wow, really well said, Lindsay. I can't wait to get back from the break, because we're going to talk a little bit about how people have done it wrong, and we're going to talk about like how to really apply what we're talking about to their businesses. So we're gonna take a quick break, guys, and when we come back, Lindsay and I are going to dive deep on how to actually do this at your industrial distribution or manufacturing company. Stay right there. Don't go away. We were made for this industry. We've been learning, listening, and adapting for over 15 years. But I feel like we've only just begun. From the beginning, our mission was to help industrial suppliers grow their business. Today, the world is spinning faster than ever before, and we refuse to slow down because nothing less than the future is at stake. For many of our clients, we are the bridge between yesterday and tomorrow, helping them seize the moment today. They say tigers starve last. Are you hungry? Are you playing offense, attacking the market and driving change? Or are you retreating to the boardroom, trying to figure out how to survive? Everything we do is about building relationships and brands that stand the test of time. So we're crazy passionate about helping you transform your business. That's our legacy. What's yours?
When ordinary signage won't do, armor up with a protection that's powerful enough to survive any environment. Duck Armor by AccuForm. Designed to protect against scratches, scrapes, and impacts. Built to endure damaging chemical washing, graffiti resistant, and able to withstand UV yellowing or fading, plus cold weather cracking. Duck Armor is the original liquid laminate coating, pioneered by AccuForm. Don't fall for a decoy.
Huh?
Get Duck Armor. We don't send strongmen into battle without armor. Get the sign coating you know will last against harsh abrasions, tough chemicals, taggers, and extreme environments. Duck Armor is tough enough for scratches, scrapes, impacts, weather, washing, sun, graffiti, and... What are you doing?
Oh, I was just gonna...
What? No. Why would you do that? Like all liquid laminate signs, Duck Armor's ultra-hard surface cleans easily, like water off a duck's back, and it withstands tough conditions, keeping your sign and message clear. But only Duck Armor can protect more than your signs, with over 90,000 products armed and ready. Not like that. Don't pay for protective coating on cheap sign material. Duck Armor gives you superior coating on premium signs at no extra cost. All the protection without the bill. Your facility deserves the best protection on the best signs. Durable and resilient. Light as a feather. Duck Armor has you covered.
Hey guys, welcome back. We've been talking with Lindsay Konzak at Aspens Media about content marketing and storytelling. And this has been a great conversation so far. And I wanted to tell you, and I mentioned at the start of the show, that I've been studying the topic storytelling. So I just got done finishing and studying the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And Donald Miller is an author, and he runs a marketing a consultation firm up in Nashville. But this book that he created has really resonated here in our offices. And one of the things that we did was we have a creative mastermind group inside of the company. It's part of our training program. And so we got together, we got everybody the book, and we've been going through it week after week. And I got to tell you, it's been really groundbreaking for me. And I wanted to share some of the thoughts from the book with you guys, and then we're going to jump back into some questions for Lindsay. But some of the thoughts from the book really touched on what Lindsay had already said, and that is that it has to start with the pain point of the customer or your audience, knowing who that person or who that persona truly is, and then being authentic and guiding them to a solution, to an outcome. And so here's kind of the way that the story brand framework works as according to Donald Miller's book. So it starts like this. You have a character, okay? And a character, and this story brand model, by the way, is it's a theme that runs through like the best movies and the best stories of all time. And it's consistent this way pretty much from the dawn of human history. But a character is the main starting point for this framework. And this character has a problem. And that's what Lindsay talked about. She talked about the pain points. And the character has a problem, and then eventually this character meets a guide, somebody who understands their problem. And you notice, like, the best stories have this framework, right? So think of Star Wars, think of Luke, and he's the character, and then he runs into, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he's the guide who understands his dilemma and helps him get to where he needs to be. And that's the next part of the story brand framework, is that guide gives that hero or that character a plan to accomplish their goals. And he doesn't just leave them there, right? But he calls that character to action. So a call to action at that point where you're saying, here's the plan and here's what you need to do. You need to take action now. And your action is either going to result in a good outcome, you're going to get what you want, you're going to save the day, you're going to destroy the Death Star, you're going to win the battle, or not. You're going to fail, and the evil empire is going to take over the galaxies, and everything is going to be cold and dark. So that's the idea of good storytelling according to Donald Miller, and it really resonated with me because I started thinking about every good story that really sucks you in. It has that theme. There's always the character, the guide, the plan, and the call to action. And I think Lindsay had touched on a few of those already. So getting back to Lindsay, I want to ask you, Lindsay, we talked about, before the break, we talked about some elements of good storytelling, some good marketing. But tell me about what bad content marketing looks like. And I've seen a lot of bad branded content out there. So, what are some examples of that, and how can we fix that if we're maybe guilty of it ourselves?
Sure. And I just wanted to briefly build on what you just said with your great analogy with Star Wars. Is that sense of urgency? I think, and I guess going into the next question, good content marketing does have that because, and I'll answer your question in a second, but you hear this phrase thought leadership, right? And thought leadership is basically a way of, again, showcasing, what you're talking about, showcasing your expertise. But I think some of thought leadership has gotten watered down. And I also have a book, and it's sitting on my shelf right now, but it's by the same people who wrote the Challenger Sale. And in there they talk about the fact that that sense of urgency is so critical You really do have to instill in the person that's reading it, hey, this really, really matters. If you don't do this, I don't know about going into a deep dark hole or whatever it is you said. But in today's world, I don't know. I think it is, the stakes are really high for a lot of companies. And I think, a lot of the solutions that distributors have to offer them, a lot of what they can help these companies with, they really can, mean the difference between staying ahead of the competition falling behind. So I just wanted to emphasize that sense of urgency piece, because I think that's what a lot of great content marketing is missing. So not telling you about the consequences of this problem if you don't act. So that kind of goes into
a great point.
Bad branded content piece. Yeah, there's a lot out there. Again, one of the things that I see a lot is just people, there's a lot of Me Too's out there. There's a lot of companies that are saying exactly the same thing. And that kind of destroys the point of really authentically communicating with your clients. And I had some data, so forgive me for looking down at my paper here, but so I think, so during a buyer's journey, there's a report, some research done by the Demand Gen report, which you may be familiar with. And it said 40% of buyers, and this is B2B, said they read about 3 to 5 pieces of marketing content. And nearly 40% more said they engage with 5 or more. So that's blog posts, white papers, case studies, and webinars. And what they don't want, and this is what people do wrong, is they don't want to read about the product features. They don't need to do that. They don't want to be overwhelmed with promotions. They don't want every piece of content you send them to have some call to action asking them to buy something. That's a mistake I find a lot. Like, if you genuinely want to help your customer, you guys have done a lot of great white papers and reports for some of your customers in the safety market, for example. And you've done some good white papers that kind of outline best practices in using, XYZ equipment. But if you genuinely want your customers to have that information, you just want to help them, don't end it with, 3 buttons and then follow it up with 5 emails that say, hey, you like this, buy this now, buy this now, buy this now. So you're just going to annoy them. Just let them take in the information, let them see you as an expert, and then they'll come to you. Eventually you do have to ask for the sale, but I think that's one big mistake that I frequently see made. So one of the things, a couple tips that I kind of think about that's kind of the reverse of what's bad. So what's good would be, don't overwhelm people with the promotions. Know when and how to ask people for the order online. Don't do it early in the cycle. If they're just doing research on how best to use a certain piece of equipment, they may or may not need you yet. But be the person they're looking to for that information, so that when they are ready, know when to stop selling. And I kind of like to give people the 80-20-ish rule. I think maybe even 90-10. Most of your social or blogs or white papers or emails should offer something of value. And I think people often do it the flip. They're doing more promotional and less value. I think it should be most value, less promotional. Otherwise, they're just going to stop paying attention. They're going to stop following you on social media. They're going to unsubscribe from your emails, and so on. So those are a few things that kind of get to me.
That's great. I think what you said is very true. I think we have a lot of Me Too things going on right now from our industry. I of course I work with a lot of safety companies, and I cannot tell you. So you go through the summertime, and every single article is heat stress. 3 tips about how to keep your workers from passing out. 3, here's some, heat stress, and we're starting to become very noisy, and we're not really saying anything. We're not differentiating ourselves. And you're right. So as a marketer myself, and I do a lot of marketing automation, for our clients, and I got to tell you, like the whole idea of ClickFunnels, it's just not a very good strategy. And what customers would rather prefer, in my opinion, is to engage with the marketing content on their own terms, sort of think of it like a buffet table, and then have the sales process be a little more clear. So it's like, okay, now a salesperson is reaching out to me. I don't get it's not like a bait and switch type of scenario that's happening. I think that bait and switch thing is very dangerous, and I would agree that's not a good way to do storytelling. So my next question is, how do we know what stories to write about? If I just made fun of the, all of the heat stress things, I think what we're doing there is, if I'm a safety distributor, for example, I'm thinking, well, it's summertime. This is something that my safety director customers are concerned about. So that's what I have to write about. So how do we come up with topics of content? How do you go about that process?
Well, let's start with that heat stress example since it's top of mind. I think one thing people have to think about is how they can, obviously if your customers need information about that, and you want to be the person they reach out to for that information, then you need to have it somewhere, right? But is there a way you can tell that story differently? Could you find a customer who, I don't know, had a heat stress incident and tell that story? Or maybe that's not the best example, but maybe there's a way to personalize that a little bit more. And then on the sidebar or story, here's the tips to avoid it. So I think that's at a high level. I think one thing that companies need to do is think about how they can repurpose and rethink about how, what's the angle they're going to take so that they can stand out. And, and that's the journalist in me talking, that's the editor in me talking, because when you're writing about the same topics year after year for a magazine or a newspaper, you have to think of fresh angles. You have to say, hey, we wrote about this from this angle this year. Let's this angle this year. So that's kind of ingrained in me, but I think it's a really good so the simple answer to your question though is to just, again, like I said earlier, talk to your customers. And so I wrote down a few questions that maybe people can start with. And we have many more where this came from. So of course, who are they? What do they do? I'm sure we could, talk forever on personas, but that's basically, the guy on the factory floor is going to have a different perspective than the guy, than the CFO when it comes to what they care about. So it all depends on who you're targeting. What are their pain points? What role do you play for them? If they seriously just see you as a transactional, they just want to go to you, order, their basic, their janitorial items, whatever, their toilet paper, their paper towels, whatever. They just want to make the transaction and walk away. Well, then that's probably not a target for this, this approach. So you really have to understand, do they even care about these kinds of resources, or they just want to make the purchase and get out of there? So how do they want to buy from you? How do they want to be communicated with? Do you have competition for their attention? Where else are they going to get their information? There's all sorts of questions that you can ask your customers to better understand kind of where their mind is and what they care about. And then, of course, you want to talk to them, of course, about what they value, about what you do. Again, the other kinds of resources that they use to get the information they need to do their job better. That'll really inform, because you're competing with that. And I think if your research is done right, I think you're going to uncover what really matters. And for a lot of people, that's going to require rewriting. I know it's scary, rewriting your website, because that matters. That should, that's not strictly content marketing, but that reflects who you are online. Maybe highlighting a feature or benefit that maybe you were downplaying based on the research that you do, highlighting the testimonials that support the message, and bringing really what matters most to your customers to the forefront. And then building kind of a content plan, like what resources, will address those pain points. And I know it's crazy, but just talking to your customers is like the best answer I can give to that question. How are you going to know what they want to read? Ask them.
No, it's not crazy at all, Lindsay. I think but it's easier said than done. I think that's what the problem is that the sales reps, they do a good job talking to their customers. I think they know their customers very well, but I think what you find is that there's a feedback gap between sales and marketing. The people that are writing the stories are not really in touch with the people that are touching the customers, and so there can be, there can be the missteps there because we're not communicating well with each other. And I think, if there's one thing to be said about what you just told us, is that it's critically important that the people who are doing the storytelling, the people that are doing your content marketing or writing copy on your website, that they have a direct line either with the customer themselves or with the people who know the customer best.
Yes, and that's a really good point. And I know that's challenging for a lot of organizations because, as you said, there's usually a wall between that sales and marketing. I think the other thing that you could do is a marketing folk, if you do have someone in-house that's doing this kind of work, is to interview the salespeople as well. Because even though they aren't the customer, they're the ones talking with them. They're the ones interacting with them and helping them with their problems every day. So they're the ones with the knowledge and the expertise who are going to help fuel. And I think if they feel like they are part of that process and that you can develop resources to help them, I think easier said than done, I know, but I think you can start to break down some of those walls.
Awesome. Well, Lindsay, I honestly could go on talking about this for a couple more hours, but unfortunately, I think we're running out of time here. So how about we do this? I'm going to kind of make a little transition towards wrapping this thing up. And with that, I'm going to ask you a really important question I think some of our listeners might be out there asking themselves, and that is, what if I told you right now, Lindsay, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I know that it's important. I know that my website is outdated. I don't have any of that good content on the site. But honestly, I'm struggling with how to begin this thing. I feel like maybe it's so far. Such a big project that I don't even know where to begin, starting it. What would you say to me?
Sure. I want to start real quickly by saying that I think that you need a point person in-house. I think you need a marketing manager or marketing director. I don't think, enough distributors have prioritized the marketing role, and I think that would be a really good place to start because you really need to build a strategy behind this. It's not just about the content. And then second, I think, there's a lot of outside resources you can hire to do this. Our company does this, your company does this. And I think that's a really good option, right? But also I don't want people to overthink it. So I do just want to point out that you could build a library of technical resources on your website for your customers. I work with the manufacturers, a lot of whom already have those resources available. You could create a series of videos on your iPhone. Yes, there's some great videos out there that are very well professionally produced, but you could just take your iPhone, put a salesperson in front of it, and have them talk about the answer to a frequently asked question. So you could really just start small and build out a series of pieces like that. I prefer a big, more complicated strategy, but really it's just about how can you communicate better to your clients and help them do their jobs better. And so, starting with just a video series is good. Posting on social regularly is good. So those are just a few of the small things. And I do just want to emphasize to close it out that this is not something that you're going to produce a video, put it out there on social, and suddenly you're going to get $1 quadrillion in sales. This is a long game. This is a long play. It could take a year before you start to see momentum and the ROI that you're looking for. So this is really just about establishing yourself as, the person who knows what they're doing in the market and the person who cares about the customers that they work with.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think that's very helpful. And as we're just closing up, Lindsay, why don't you talk a little bit about where people can reach out to you, a little bit about 3 Aspens, and if they're interested in reaching out and working with you, how can they do that?
Sure. You can go to our website, 3aspensmedia.com, and that's the number 3. So 3 Aspens, plural, media.com. You can email me directly, all sorts of spelling things here, Lindsay, Lindsay, or just do info. That'll go directly to me as well. Or give me a call, 970-581-1752. We have a lot of good resources on our website as well. If we didn't, we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. So check that out as well if you just want to learn a little bit more.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely be linking to that in the show notes and give everybody your contact info. Lindsay, it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us today. It's always great talking to you, and we'll see you again soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt.